Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. So this supposedly is Zechariah, son of Berechiah, the one that Christ talks about in the New Testament, that the Jews killed between, I believe he said, the temple and the altar. This is Zechariah 12. An important part of this is where it mentions the clans of Judah are a fire pot in a wood pile, a flaming torch among them, among the sheaves. So now notice that we see that Babylon and the enemies of Israel are and the enemies of the righteous of Israel specifically, okay, in the story, which is superimposed on the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. Again, I can't stress that enough, right? Who is the real? We have to trace the real from God, okay, through the first people, right, in the beginning, okay, through Nimrod, okay, who was the first mighty hunter before the Lord. So when God said, he said, Noah's a righteous man, do, but going beyond Noah was Nimrod. Why? Because he's a mighty warrior. It's like the difference between somebody who's a pretty nice guy, pretty righteous guy, and everyone's wicked, and he's like, I'm kind of righteous, okay? And he says, well, you're the only guy who's kind of righteous, so I'm going to choose you. And somebody who cultivates righteousness and bears more fruit than that, right? And becomes a mighty warrior, the parable of the 10 minas. He's given him more, and he produces more. And God says, take charge of more and become a more important character in the bigger scheme of things. So before Noah's importance is Nimrod's importance. Closer to God is Nimrod if we use a fair scale. And it says in Proverbs that the Lord detests dishonest scales. So must we assign more importance to the first mighty warrior? Perhaps the mightiest warrior up until, excuse me. To the first mighty warrior, who's the mightiest warrior in the area, right? Is the mightiest known warrior at the time. Okay, in the story. And the story is really in the whole world. But should we assign more importance to this guy than somebody who merely is seen as more righteous than a world full of extreme wickedness, who's given a boat, who, figuratively speaking, who weathers the storm? How you can be a nice old lady and weather the storm. Because if we don't assign Nimrod more importance, then why assign David more importance? Why did he say on the root and offspring of David and not Abraham or Moses? So we must assign Nimrod more importance than Abraham and Moses and Noah. Before Abraham I am. So when we see Zechariah, for that same reason, once you realize that must be the case, then it opens your eyes to some degree in regards to the interpretation of Zechariah 12. Jerusalem's enemies to be destroyed. So why bother telling us Jerusalem's enemies are going to be destroyed unless warrior things have importance? Why bother telling us the Lord is a warrior, the Lord is his name? Okay, people don't understand that. That's why they have these kind of shallow, cheesy interpretations. A prophecy, the word of the Lord concerning Israel. The Lord who stretches out the heavens, who lays the foundation of the earth, and who forms the human spirit within a person declares. So he forms the human spirit. And the Lord is a warrior. And I'm set apart as the top martial artist ever. My warrior spirit, my soul, is greater. The spirit comes from God, but expressing itself through my soul is greater than other people. So I'm the lamp that's supposed to be on its stand for all to see. The Lord who stretches out the heavens, who lays the foundation of the earth, and who forms the human spirit within a person, declares, I am going to make Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding people's reelings. Remember I said early on in reading Jeremiah 51, I said, Jerusalem is like the heart of the Babylonian cup. So Babylon was a gold cup, and it becomes it becomes part of the cup that's in the hand of the prostitute. So the prostitute, to some degree, is Babylon. It merged with Babylon, right? It's the spirit of prostitution and adultery. The cup is also Babylon, and it's also Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is in Babylon. Just like Jesus says, bear with me, he says, I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. The cup and its contents are in the prostitute. And the prostitute is in the cup and its contents. Okay? So, Jerusalem is a cup. And it's also it's a component of the cup that the prostitute in Revelation is drinking. We see in Galatians 4. They say Jerusalem in the sky is our mother. Jerusalem in this world is bound in captivity. And a captive to sin. To the wickedness. And we see that also, I believe, in Zechariah as well, where it says, we'll get to that later, the woman in the basket. Okay? There's a woman in the basket, and it has to do with, a bread basket, and it has to do with the bread of wickedness and the affliction. Wickedness burns like a fire, the affliction that comes with it. Okay, so Babylon is a whore and a cup. And the whore is in the cup, and the cup is in the whore. See, don't you? This is why I don't like the Bible, because it's a riddle. It's like, figure it out, pal. Okay, it's a riddle. Okay, why is Jerusalem a cup when it's a city? Well, they say, well, it's not a city. It's in the sky. Why didn't they give it different names? Because they made it confusing on purpose. And that's what it's saying again here when it says, I'm going to make Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples reeling. If you have any questions, ask in the comments. I know it's a little bit confusing, and I'm not trying to confuse you at all. Jerusalem is a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples reeling. Okay? And includes the people who wrote the Bible. Bible, a deity of storms, which is confusion. Which so by default is a deity of confusion. Brainstorm. Okay? See your way through the brainstorm to make an orderly, brainstorming and putting an orderly process to what you're brainstorming aren't the same thing. This is like brainstorming, and you have to order it correctly. With righteousness and justice as the measuring line and plume line. So I'm going to make Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples reeling. Judah will be besieged as well as Jerusalem. On that day when all the nations of the earth are gathered against her, right? Gathered against her, marshaled to gather, Satan's own, right? I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations. All who try to move it will injure themselves. So all the nations are going to gather against the true Jerusalem in the sky. And this is confusing here because they're gathered against Jerusalem in the sky. However, Jerusalem in the world is a cup. This is part of the writing style of the authors of the Bible where they do this kind of double meaning stuff. Okay? Jerusalem in this world is an evil place. Jerusalem in the sky is who they've gathered against. Okay, and this is part of what you see where they try to stigmatize me. They say this guy is a bad guy, right? Some people try to stigmatize me, and it's laughable. They have no case whatsoever. No one believes them. They don't believe themselves. But they say this guy's a bad guy in their own way. They say, well, why are you doing it this way? Or maybe you're an incel. Why are you criticizing women? Or whatever they have to say, okay? Building straw man arguments. They say, so they've gathered against me, and they've misrepresented me. Just like they misrepresented what they're talking about in their book. Say, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations. The immovable rock is God. So Jerusalem in the sky, that's with God. We say, how do you know it's not on earth? Because it says heaven and earth will pass away. Why would he make Jerusalem a divine city in this world and then the earth passes away? That makes no sense. It says right there in Isaiah, heaven is my throne, earth is my footstool. Where will you build this temple for me? It says in Isaiah 24 and 34. That the earth sinks never to rise again. It's going to be totally destroyed. It says the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. If they're planning to make Jerusalem a holy place in this world, why are you taking the righteous away from this world? What are you building with? That's the foolish builders who build in this world. Store riches in heaven, not in this world. Matthew 6. On that day when all the nations of the earth are gathered against her, I'll make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations. All who try to move it will injure themselves. All who move against me and God Almighty, because I am the gate into heaven, the gate into Jerusalem, the gate into Zion, the city of God, the city of Zion. See 2 Samuel 5, that's how I refer to. The city of David, the city of God, is the fortress of Zion. All who try to move it will injure themselves. Can you move against the most righteous person that ever lived without causing extreme damage to your mind, body, soul, and spirit? No. Can you move against the most righteous person that ever lived without causing extreme damage to your mind, body, soul, and spirit? No. All who move against me, because I am the rock. I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. All who cheat me out of my right to lead will go mad with terror, will be deluded, and will go to hell no matter what their cultural values tell them, no matter what their pitiful psychological scale and their lost psychologists tell them. On that day I will strike every horse with panic and its rider with madness, declares the Lord. I will keep a watchful eye over Judah, but I will blind all the horses of the nations, their mental eye. Okay? Their spirit is blinded. So again, they could hit me in the head with a fucking hammer and I go into a coma. That did not blind me in the way that they're talking about in this scripture. I am one with the Father. I live forever. The flesh means nothing is what the New Testament says. The spirit means everything. But their pitiful spirits that are in rebellion are being punished more and more every moment that they cheat me out of my right to lead. And the horse is symbolic of spirit. The horses, the chariots. His chariots are like the cloud. They advance like the clouds. That is the horses driving the chariots. The horsemen of the apocalypse. These are spirits. On the spirit of the horse. The horse is like one with the spirit. They're moving together, right? On him sat death. Behold a pale horse. Behold a spirit of sickness, right? Pale and sickness. On it sat death. And hell followed with it. Because when you're in rebellion, you're without the spirit of God, so you're the walking dead. So you're drawing the spirit of hell into the world. Hellraiser, raising hell. Ward and draw. You're warding the spirit of righteousness by your wicked actions of cheating me out of my right to lead. For rebellion and arrogance are like the sin of divination and idolatry, it says in 1 Samuel. Do not rebel against the God or the king, it says in Proverbs. Whoever rebels against me rebels against God, because I and the Father are one. And this is why it says all the nations. Why? Because they're all greedy, Setian trash. Zeus, filth, Baalist garbage. They say, hey, we don't want people to look up to him because we're idolatrous idiots with statues and paintings and go, oh, yes, of course, we're important. Think about it. Is that not exactly what you expected? If you were the writer of Zechariah, would you not have been able to predict that as well? Especially if you're in a cult that wants to keep this guy's line alive until the perfect time. Then the clans of Judah will say in their hearts, the people of Jerusalem are strong because the Lord Almighty is their God. They'll say the people of Jerusalem. The people who, Isaiah 57, the righteous are taken away. So there's either one person or there's not many of them. This guy could not predict how many there were going to be. He said most people aren't fucking dumb enough. If you get a million, if you get 330 something million people like in America, maybe 1 or 2 million are going to team up with them. Maybe 1 or 200. What are the odds that they're all so fucking dumb that none of them obey God through them? That's outrageous. So he said, okay, I'm going to use the word plural, the people. And if for nothing else, because I'm speaking so figuratively and generally, he's saying that he could be referring to the spirits in the spirit realm and this guy. See Galatians 4 if you don't believe me. Makes it crystal clear that it's not as simple as they're talking about Jerusalem in this world. And you can put the rest together from there. Okay, most of that time, let me shoot this. All right. On that day, I'll make the clans of Judah like a fire pot in a wood pile, like a flaming torch among the sheaves. They will consume all the surrounding peoples right and left, but Jerusalem will remain intact in her place. Okay, so the clans of Judah and Jerusalem in the sky and the wickedness of Jerusalem on this world, working in concert to destroy the souls of the nations of the world. Why? Because they cheated me out of my right to lead. When you cheat the most righteous guy ever possible out of his right to lead, there are serious consequences, especially after thousands and thousands of years of wickedness on this planet. The Lord is a God of justice, first and foremost. You cannot have love without justice. Okay, the fruit of the righteous is wisdom. You cannot have wisdom without righteousness. The Proverbs says no one can be established to wickedness, and so on and so forth. The Lord will save the dwellings of Judah first, so that the honor of those of David and Jerusalem's inhabitants will not be greater than that of Judah. On that day the Lord will shield those who live in Jerusalem, so that the feeblest among them will be like David, and the house of David will be like God, like the angel of the Lord going before them. So the feeble of them will be like David was before God came. And the house of David will be like God, and they will be in David. So God will be in me, and I will be in them. And they will be in me, and they will be in God. You see what I'm saying? But they're still in order. Does that mean they will become God? No. Does it mean I will become God? No. There's a divine order. I'm still above them. They will be like. It says, like Jesus said in Matthew 10, no servant can be greater. It's enough for him to be like his master, but he doesn't become the master. On that day I will set out to destroy all the nations that attack Jerusalem. That's all the nations in the world. None of them swore allegiance to me. Not one of them. None of them sent attractive women, for example. There's various things we look for. Do they scramble here and are ready to die by me? No. Do they send attractive women with them? No. Do they send attractive women by themselves? No. And I'll pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. They will look on me, and the one they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and grieve bitterly for him as one grieves for a firstborn son. On that day the weeping in Jerusalem will be as great as the weeping in Hadad Rimmon in the plain of Megiddo. The Lord will mourn each clan by itself with their wives by themselves, the clan of the house of David and their wives, the clan of the house of Nathan and their wives, the clan of the house of Levi and their wives, the clan of Shimei and their wives, and all the rest of the clans and their wives.